Welcome to Final Descent, the podcast that explores the chilling true stories of aviation disasters. I'm your host, Russell, and today we're dissecting a terrifying incident that unfolded thousands of feet above the ground. Imagine this. A routine cargo flight suddenly turns into a fight for survival as smoke fills the cockpit, alarms blare, and the crew races against time to land a burning aircraft. This is the story of Saab 340A, Victor Hotel Kilo Delta Kilo, and the harrowing in-flight fire that nearly claimed the lives of two pilots. Join me as we uncover the events of that fateful day, examine the investigation, and uncover the contributing factors that led to this near catastrophe. The morning of April 23, 2023 began like any other for the two-person crew of a Saab 340A cargo plane. Their mission, a seemingly routine non-revenue flight, ferrying an engine from Wagga Wagga, New South Wales to Charleville, Queensland. The flight was cruising smoothly at 22,000 feet, a typical altitude for this type of aircraft. As they passed east of Cobar, New South Wales, the tranquility of the flight was shattered. A piercing alarm blared. A cargo smoke indication flashed on the central warning panel. The crew immediately donned their oxygen masks and smoke goggles, a standard precaution in such situations. However, what should have been a routine safety measure quickly became a critical problem. The first officer's oxygen mask microphone malfunctioned, its signal barely audible to the captain and making communication extremely difficult. Precious seconds ticked by as they struggled to establish a clear line of communication, hindering their ability to coordinate their emergency response. The cockpit voice recorder later revealed a frustrating 57-second delay before effective communication was re-established, a lifetime in such a critical situation. As the smoke began to thicken in the cockpit, the captain, drawing on his experience, made the swift decision to divert to Cobar, New South Wales. The airport was familiar to him, allowing for a straightforward approach with minimal maneuvering, a crucial factor given the deteriorating conditions. Simultaneously, the first officer, despite the faulty microphone, managed to transmit a pan-pan call to Melbourne Centre, alerting air traffic control to their urgent situation. Because of limited radio coverage in the Cobar area, communication became even more challenging, relying on an overflying aircraft to relay messages between the distressed Saab 340A and air traffic control. The situation continued to escalate as they descended through 16,000 feet. Another alarm, cabin pressure failure. The aircraft was rapidly losing pressurization, adding another layer of complexity to the already critical situation. This forced the crew to increase their rate of descent, aiming to get below 10,000 feet as quickly as possible, where the thinner air would pose less risk to the crew and aircraft. Smoke now filled the cockpit, severely restricting visibility and making it nearly impossible to see the flight instruments or the world outside. Fighting through the smoke and relying on memory, the crew began working through the emergency checklists. They managed to close the left bleed valve, the first step in isolating the source of the smoke. However, locating the cross-valve handle, a critical step in the cargo compartment smoke checklist, proved impossible in the thick smoke and their unfamiliarity with the cargo configuration. The voice recorder captured their frantic search. A full minute spent groping in the dark before they were forced to abandon the search and continue with the remaining checklist items. With visibility reduced to mere centimeters, the captain recalled sliding his seat forward, desperate to catch a glimpse of the instrument panel through the dense smoke. Just 5 minutes after their initial pan-pan call, a new warning light illuminated avionics smoke. This was quickly followed by the activation of the smoke removal checklist, a desperate attempt to clear the cockpit. One checklist item called for slowing the aircraft below 160 knots and opening a crew hatch to ventilate the smoke. However, fearing the unknown severity of the fire, the crew prioritized reaching the airport and chose to maintain their speed, a calculated risk to expedite their landing. As they approached Cobar, the smoke began to dissipate, offering a glimmer of hope. This allowed the crew to navigate visually, guiding the aircraft towards the runway for a safe, albeit harrowing, landing. Uncertain about the extent and location of the fire, the crew elected to stop the aircraft on the runway and initiate an emergency evacuation. Following procedure, they activated the fire extinguisher system, cutting off fuel to the engines and deploying the fire suppressant. They then quickly exited the aircraft, their ordeal lasting a tense 22 minutes from the first warning to touchdown. The smoldering Saab 340A sat silently on the runway at Khobar, a stark testament to the drama that had just unfolded. The immediate aftermath focused on ensuring the safety of the crew and containing the fire, but the crucial task of determining what went wrong had just begun. This was where the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, the ATSB, stepped in. Their investigation aimed not just to understand this specific incident, but to prevent similar events from happening again. One of the first priorities for the investigators was to pinpoint the origin of the fire. Examining the wreckage, they found the most significant damage concentrated around the right recirculating fan, located beneath the cabin floor. The fan itself seemed remarkably intact, but the box subassembly, housing critical electronic components, was severely damaged. Melted metal, charred wiring, and heavy soot pointed towards an electrical failure within this unit as the likely source of the fire. Further examination of the electronic card subassembly, consisting of 3 circuit boards, revealed significant burning, corroborating their initial assessment. The ATSB's technical experts meticulously analyzed the damaged components at their facilities in Canberra. They found evidence of extreme heat damage to the electromagnetic interference filter, with the steel mounting plate showing heat tinting indicative of temperatures reaching 310 degrees to 330 degrees Celsius. While the motor itself showed no signs of internal damage and could still rotate freely, the surrounding electrical components were ravaged by the fire. Importantly, there was no indication that any circuit breakers associated with the electronic card subassembly had tripped, adding another layer of mystery to the investigation. Beyond the physical examination, the ATSB also delved into the recorded data from the flight. The Flight Data Recorder, or FDR, had unfortunately stopped recording around the same time as the initial smoke indication, likely due to damage from the spreading fire. However, flight tracking data from Flight Radar 24 provided a complete picture of the flight path, from departure at Wagga Wagga to the emergency landing at Khobar, corroborating the crew's account of the diversion. The cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, proved invaluable. It captured the crew's initial reactions, their struggle to communicate through the faulty oxygen mask, their frantic search for the elusive cross-valve handle, and their disciplined execution of the emergency checklists amid the chaos. The CVR offered a rare, real-time glimpse into the cockpit during the emergency, providing critical context to the physical evidence. This combination of wreckage analysis and recorded data allowed investigators to begin piecing together the sequence of events that led to the near disaster. The ATSB investigation unearthed a series of interconnected factors that contributed to the severity of the incident. One of the most significant findings was the absence of a crucial safety feature, the smoke barrier curtain. This fire-resistant curtain, designed to isolate the cargo compartment from the cockpit, was not installed, allowing smoke to quickly engulf the flight deck. Adding to this, the flight deck door was found to have been left open during the flight, against standard operating procedures, further facilitating the smoke spread. This combination proved critical, turning a contained cargo fire into a flight deck emergency. The crew's unfamiliarity with the cargo configuration of the aircraft also played a significant role. Both pilots were primarily rostered for passenger operations and lacked experience with the cargo variant of the Saab 340. This unfamiliarity manifested critically when, amidst the smoke-filled cockpit, the crew struggled to locate the cross-valve handle. This valve, crucial for isolating airflow to the cabin in the event of a cargo fire, was a feature unique to the cargo configuration, and its unactivated state allowed the smoke to continue circulating throughout the aircraft. Compounding this, neither of the flight crew operating manuals included specific information about the location or operation of the cross-valve handle, nor did they emphasize the importance of the smoke barrier curtain. This omission from official documentation meant the crew had no readily available reference during the emergency, and their lack of prior training on the cargo configuration left them unprepared for this specific scenario. These factors combined to create a perfect storm of challenges for the crew as they fought to control the escalating emergency. Finally, the investigation revealed a critical oversight in pre-flight procedures. While Saab's documentation for the cargo conversion included fitting the smoke barrier curtain as a limitation, this crucial step was absent from the pre-flight checklists. This omission cascaded down to the operators who, relying on the manufacturer's documentation, also failed to incorporate the smoke curtain check into their own pre-flight procedures. Consequently, there was no system in place to ensure the curtain was installed before a cargo flight, leaving the flight crew unaware of its existence or purpose. This lack of a mandatory check left a gaping hole in safety procedures, ultimately contributing to the flight deck becoming uninhabitable. These contributing factors highlight a critical intersection of technical malfunction, procedural gaps, and training deficiencies. Each, in isolation, may have presented a manageable challenge, but together they created a serious threat to the safety of the flight. In the aftermath of this harrowing incident, the ATSB issued a series of crucial safety recommendations aimed at preventing similar occurrences in the future. These recommendations targeted the identified weaknesses in documentation, training, and pre-flight procedures, aiming to bolster safety nets and equip flight crews for such emergencies. First and foremost, the ATSB called on Saab to rectify the critical omission in their documentation. They recommended that Saab explicitly include the smoke barrier curtain fitment in pre-flight documentation for the cargo-configured Saab 340 aircraft. This seemingly simple addition would alert flight crews to the existence and importance of this safety feature, emphasizing its mandatory use for cargo flights and differentiating the procedure from the passenger-configured version. This crucial information, readily available during pre-flight preparations, could prevent a repeat of the incident, ensuring the smoke barrier is never again overlooked. Next, the ATSB addressed the critical gap in operator documentation and training. The operator was directed to revise their flight crew operating manuals to include clear and comprehensive instructions on the location and operation of the cross-valve handle and the smoke curtain. This inclusion would provide flight crews with the essential knowledge needed to manage a similar emergency effectively. Beyond updating manuals, the operator was urged to ensure that all its flight crews, especially those scheduled to fly freight operations, receive training on the differences between passenger and freight-configured Saab 340 aircraft. This training should encompass the unique features of the cargo configuration, like the cross-valve, and emphasize the specific emergency procedures required in such scenarios. By implementing this training, the operator could equip its pilots with the necessary knowledge and skills to confidently and safely operate both versions of the aircraft. Finally, the ATSB's recommendations focused on the vital importance of pre-flight checks. They stressed the need for a specific pre-flight inspection for the correct fitment of the smoke barrier curtain. This recommendation emphasized building redundancy into the safety system. Even with improved documentation and training, human error can still occur. A mandatory physical check ensures that this vital safety feature is never left uninstalled. This multi-layered approach of improved documentation, targeted training, and rigorous pre-flight checks creates a comprehensive safety net, drastically reducing the risk of a similar incident in the future. The near disaster aboard Victor Hotel Kilo Delta Kilo serves as a stark reminder of the critical importance of robust safety procedures in aviation. The incident highlighted how a chain of seemingly minor oversights, an unclosed cockpit door, an unlocated cross-valve handle, an uninstalled smoke barrier can escalate into a life-threatening situation. The investigation underscored that thorough and up-to-date manuals, comprehensive training that addresses all aircraft configurations, and meticulous pre-flight checks are not mere formalities but indispensable safeguards against potential catastrophe. The lessons learned from this incident extend beyond the specific circumstances of the flight, reminding us that vigilance and adherence to safety protocols are paramount in every flight operation. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Final Descent. Until next time, fly safe.